All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Tundra. This is Tundra Fight School, and we are again standing in a cube of water. Okay, it's not really water. This is just a trigger. It's not even a cube. It's a cylinder. Okay, fine. You got me. Today we're talking about buoyancy. If you haven't seen part one, this is part two. Go back, watch part one. This will make a lot more sense then. So we're continuing with the buoyancy system, making some improvements to it, mostly optimizations, making things more efficient so that we can use more particles and have less detrimental effect by using lots and lots of particles for various things. So for starters, let's see, we've got our 1,000 particle cube. It responds very well. It's doing what it does. And you may notice that it has multiple states now, one of which is off. So you want to make things efficient? You want to think, you want to optimize your calculations? How about don't do them? Turn it off. That's one good way to make things run faster. So to do that, I've got a conventional trigger set up for this cube. If the cube's not touching a water object, then it clears out the trigger module collider for the particles and turns off the whole particle system so that it's not even being used. So that makes things a little bit lighter. And if the collider changes, like so, for example, this duck is only detecting this particular collider at this point in time. That's the only collider that's assigned to its trigger module in its particle system. But if I change this, it now has none. It now has this collider. So it's dynamically assigning the collider to the particle system as I change colliders and using double duty to also turn that off when it's not touching anything. So pretty cool. Also, in addition to those two states of off and partial, I've got like a full state where all of the particles are submerged. If all the particles are submerged for this cube, for example, it's much easier to just run 8 particles, one on each corner. And I know that the center of 8 particles is going to be the very center of the cube, and that makes the calculation really, really easy. I don't have to sum any locations of anything. I can just skip straight to the one calc that puts the add force in the center of the cube, and that saves calculations there. So there's savings if there's none. There's savings if there's all, and if there's partial, well, that's where you have to spend all the effort. But there's even a way to help with that. So in the previous system I was just kind of the lazy way of doing it. I was just grabbing all the particles and summing all the activated particles and summing their location by using an inside callback. If the particles were inside the collider, then I get the callback, which is the array of all particles. I loop through those. Boom, boom, boom. We've got our calculation, and away we go. But in this case, we're running probably, 700 particles or something, which the vector math for 700 things is actually really quick, but it adds up if you do enough of these things. So better than using inside, if you keep track of the enters and exits, and you keep like a rolling tally of the number and a rolling tally of the locations as they're added and as they're subtracted, then you effectively get the same data as inside, but you get it by only having a much smaller number of particles added or subtracted each frame. So right now, if this isn't changing at all, then there aren't any callbacks, enter or exit callbacks being issued for these particles, which means I don't have extra calculations going on, and it makes it a whole lot cheaper. If this is moving and changing a lot, then yeah, I've got a lot of callbacks on the things that are changing, but it's still not doing, 700 or 800 particles per frame. It's only doing maybe 15, 20, or 100 or whatever, a much lower number. So we've got efficiency we've got efficiency none, we've got efficiency even on partial by just doing the deltas. So pretty cool. So we talked about also how we can dynamically change the colliders. Oh, one more piece of efficiency. The duck has two sections. He's got a head and he's got a body. If the head has particles, I don't have to run those particles unless they're touching the water. So it makes sense to divide the duck up into segments. So I've got multiple segments which can be turned off or fully activated independently of other segments. To take that to an extreme, I made this cube, which is completely ridiculous. This is kind of a stupid object. I just wanted to do it just to do it. And it's basically a cube which is subdivided into 5 by 5 by 5 smaller cubes of 4 by 4 by 4 particles, making for a lot of potential particles. I think the particle density, the effective particle density for this object is probably like 8 times that of the other one. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. 8 times, I don't know. What's 15 times 15 times 15? I don't know. I'll do it. I'll do the math later. Anyway, you can see that some of these are in the none state, some of these are in the partial state, some of these are in the all state, and it makes for kind of a neat object. Does it make sense to do this? Probably not at all. But I still wanted to try it and see if there's kind of what's going on here. It does make sense, looking at this, it does make sense if you had an object which rode in the water like at the same height, and you could segment that object in such a way that you could optimize and use the least number of particles to that were at the surface of the water. That would actually make sense to try to do. Anyway, something to think about. Okay, moving on. I got the cans again. These are so slick. Here, check this out. I'm just going to enter these into the water nice and slow, and you can see as they activate and transition states from one to the other. It's just really slick. There's no like popping or jumping as they transition. They just come in and out of the water, just nice and smooth. Really cool. So for these cans, which are probably going to stay submerged, if they're put in the water, they're either going to be out of the water or they're going to be fully submerged most of the time. And if that's the case, it sure does make sense to run, I don't know, 8 times 6 of less than 50 particles for all those cans. I mean, that's really cheap, right? All right, so we talked about the 2 cubes and the cans and the duck. Let's go with more ducks. More duckies, just like last time. Here, I'll get the drone out and we'll check out this other section of the map that I've got going on. Poof. There we go. So the drone is up and running, and I've got this other section over here with some more water colliders. And as you can see, I've added a particle effect to them so that you can see that these particular water colliders are meant to convey some movement of the water, which is cool. So I'm using some particle force fields to make it so the particles in these colliders get moved. In this case, they shift from one tier to the next until they go down into this cool little whirlpool that I've got. And here I'll activate some little duckies. Start the duck assembly line, and we'll send them down the drain over there. Whee! So that's pretty cool, huh? So that's pretty much it. I mean, that's really what I wanted to show is the optimizations, make things a little bit better, keep using particles for more cool things, expand the particle system to not just do the buoyancy and the drag, but add the velocity of the particles imparted by particle fields to the drag calculation, which automatically gets the ducks moving in the right direction. And now we've got an even more elaborate water system. that's, I don't know, it gets so convincing. I keep thinking that I'm going to run into something when I bump into this, or that I'm going to splash or do something, and I keep having to remind myself there's nothing here. It's just purely visual unless you've got buoyancy particles attached to you. So anyway, I've got a lot of ducks going on now, and I think I'm starting to drop some frames. So I probably ought to end the video, or at least stop the ducks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll probably do one or two more in this series, at least one more. I think I want to improve the drag system. I've got some more ideas there. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Talk to you later. See you.